A mega construction with a water reservoir the size of London, with a dam almost 5 times taller than Christ the Redeemer, and with the goal of being able to block the Nile River. It sounds like something out of science fiction, but this project exists and it's in Africa. It's the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. But while this construction has the potential to boost the local economy and lift millions of people out of poverty, it could also be the spark for new conflicts in the region. This is Construction Time. I'm Luciano Guimarães, and in this video you'll learn about the $5 billion mega dam in Africa that's going to block the Nile River. But before I introduce this mega project to you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss anything. Watch more videos here on Construction Time. Ethiopia is, without a doubt, one of the most fascinating countries in Africa with a booming economy. It is the 7th African nation with the highest gross domestic product, $113 billion in nominal gross domestic product, according to International Monetary Fund data from 2022. However, Ethiopia's greatest riches go far beyond its economy. Home to the second largest number of United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization World Heritage Sites in Africa, the nation is considered the cradle of humanity. Another remarkable aspect of Ethiopia is the Blue Nile, a river that originates in Lake Tana, in the northwest of the country. It travels approximately 1,450 kilometers through Ethiopia and Sudan. Along with the White Nile, it is one of the 2 main tributaries of the Nile River, providing almost 86% of the water for one of the most iconic rivers in the world. During the rainy season, in fact, faced with such a promising river landscape, it's possible to understand why the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam was designed. When completed, the project will have a reservoir with an incredible 74 billion cubic meters of water, and it will be able to produce 5,150 megawatts, an amount that will simply double the energy supply in Ethiopia. Just as impressive as these numbers is the story and the context behind the creation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Understanding the need for the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is very simple. What happened is that in just 5 decades, the African country experienced a population explosion. Currently, Ethiopia has the second largest population in Africa, behind only Nigeria. According to the World Bank survey, by 2021 there were 117.2 million inhabitants, making it the 12th most populous country. However, just as impressive as these figures is the fact that even in 1971, that is 50 years before this record, the population was approximately 4 times smaller, with 29.1 million inhabitants. To give you an idea, during this period, the Brazilian population grew 2.17 times. However, the story of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam began even before this expansion. But tudo quiero, the United? Placement invading. First request. Believe the name the registered one, since I slowed down from getting it wet. And due to a civil war that broke out after 1974 and lasted until 1991, so the project to build a mega dam in Ethiopia only returned to discussion in 2009 when the local government began a study to determine the location of the project. The official presentation of the project only took place in March 2011. It's worth noting that the project soon faced resistance from the Egyptian government, which claimed that the construction could reduce the amount of water available in the Nile. Also, in March of the same year, Ethiopia began making the project available so that the downstream impact could be examined. Despite this, Egypt remained reluctant about the construction, even seeking diplomatic support from neighboring countries, such as Sudan, to halt the works. however without success, and after many exchanges of accusations, the deadlock only began to ease in 2019, with the United States mediating the talks. Before we talk more about the process of building this project, it's important to highlight something. Despite the name referring to the Grand Dam, there are actually two dams, the main one and the Saddle Dam. In the main dam, there are two powerhouses and three spillways. In the Saddle Dam, there is an auxiliary structure adjacent to the other dam. Among several functions, it helps with water diversion, controlling sedimentation carried by the Blue Nile, and the volume of water retained in the Grand Dam. The construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam involves several stages and engineering processes. Initially, after the site was selected and prepared, diversion tunnels were developed. To facilitate construction, they were excavated to direct the flow of the Blue Nile River. These tunnels allowed the work channel to be drained, creating a dry area for the construction of the main dam. Next came the dam's foundation, which plays a key role in its stability and longevity. The construction team prepared the dam's foundation by excavating the rocky bed and ensuring it was suitable to support the massive structure. The abutments, which are the supporting structures on both sides of the dam, were also built. Because it is a concrete gravity dam, the Ethiopian project required that the weight and design rely directly on the massive concrete structure for stability. Therefore, the construction team applied the concrete in layers, using forms to shape and contain the concrete. During the pouring process, steel reinforcement bars were also used to reinforce the concrete and increase its strength. Another interesting aspect of the dam is the three spillways to manage excess water flow, allowing controlled release of water during periods of high flow, which reduces the risk of downstream flooding. In each of them, 18,000 cubic meters of concrete were used. It is worth noting that the average annual flow of the Blue Nile available for power generation is estimated at 1,547 cubic meters per second. The complex also has two powerhouses to house generators for 13 Francis turbines, 11 of 400 megawatts, and 2 of 375 megawatts. The installation of turbines, generators, and associated electronic equipment in the powerhouse was, in fact, one of the most delicate stages. These components are essential for converting the kinetic energy of the water flow into electrical energy. The turbines are connected to generators that produce electricity, which is then transmitted to the grid. There is no doubt that the Renaissance Megadam in Ethiopia involves great efforts and impressive numbers. However, the time has come for us to understand a little more about why it will soon be the largest dam in Africa and one of the largest in the world. When the Ethiopia project is completed, it is expected to hold no less than 74 billion cubic meters of water. That's 2.55 times more than the 29 billion cubic meters of the Itaipu Reservoir here in Brazil, in terms of water volume at its maximum and normal level. What this means is that the water in the African reservoir is enough to fill more than 26 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. Besides the reservoir, the measurements related to the dams are simply incredible. The main one is 145 meters, which means it's almost 5 times taller than Christ the Redeemer. But for a more specific comparison, the mega dam Ethiopia is only 36 meters shorter than the dam of the Chinese Three Gorges hydroelectric plant. In terms of length, the Ethiopia Dam is 1,780 meters long. It's worth noting that this is a more modest number compared to large hydroelectric plants like Itaipu, whose dam is 7,919 meters long. And the result of all this Ethiopian construction is astonishing. The forecast is that the final project will be able to provide 5,150 megawatts of power, entering the world's top 20 hydroelectric plants with the highest installed capacity. To give you an idea of the scale in continental terms, the second largest hydroelectric plant in Africa The Aswan plant in Egypt has a capacity of 2,006 megawatts, almost 2.4 times less than Ethiopia. There's no doubt that any engineering project involving two countries can lead to diplomatic disagreements. And as we have just seen, the mega dam in Ethiopia was able and still is to set Ethiopia and Egypt against each other. But generally speaking, what do the experts say? In a 2021 article, two scientists commented on the subject. One is the academic researcher from the University of Applied Sciences in Cologne, Germany, Nadir Hamad El-Agib, and the other is the researcher from the University of Manchester, England, Mohammed Bashir. According to them, the hydrological changes associated with the dam can negatively impact fish, aquatic plants, and downstream biodiversity due to possible changes in temperature and the expected flooded area. The low latitude location of the tropics and the deep turbine inlets could intensify greenhouse gas emissions, while the high depth of the dam reservoir would decrease emissions. The researchers also point out that the electricity from the dam can also reduce regional greenhouse gas emissions. So Germany has significant alcohol emissions coming from Bremen. Zanoto. In turn, an article, also in 2021, created by researchers from Chinese and English universities, warns about the impacts of the project. Ethiopia goes underground. From an environmental point of view, the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is the subject of controversy. In economic terms, its country of origin brings absolutely positive prospects. Unless there are major changes, it should become a landmark in the recent history of Ethiopia. At first glance, the increase in energy supply could help the country make greater efforts toward industrialization, resulting in increased production, job creation, and economic diversification. In addition, 5,150 megawatts of energy will provide greater energy security for the country, which will double its energy capacity. And as a bonus, it results in an important opportunity to trade energy with neighboring countries, such as Sudan, South Sudan, and other nations in East Africa. This, by the way, is a potential key point for consolidating Ethiopia as an economic force in Africa. After all, the revenue from energy exports can be invested in the country's reserves, as well as in the development of local infrastructure. It is also important to point out that the regulated water flow, a result of the project, can also support irrigation projects, allowing for the expansion of agricultural production. With most of the water management and the development of irrigation infrastructure, there would likely be an increase in crop yields, resulting in greater food security and even an increase in agricultural exports. Even in the face of criticism and praise when it comes to engineering, it is almost impossible not to recognize the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as one of Africa's major projects in this century, an idea delayed for decades by conflict before becoming reality. But today it is a page of hope for millions of people in what is considered the cradle of our existence. Thanks for watching this video, and leave in the comments what you thought about this mega project in Ethiopia. Do other researchers think it will be beneficial? Also, like this video if you enjoyed it.